Observers across the British entertainment scene recall a pivotal moment in 2012, when an unassuming teenager stepped forward on a televised stage, prompting immediate speculation about whether the industry had just witnessed the emergence of an unlikely vocal phenomenon. Emerging from Essex with little public visibility, Jonathan Antoine's early trajectory resembles a case study in how rare talent sometimes surfaces from unexpected environments. Educators familiar with his background report that his vocal ability was recognized not through competitive showcases, but through routine school rehearsals, where teachers noted an unusually resonant lower register for someone his age. Accounts from those familiar with the period suggest that Antoine's initial reluctance to perform made his later ascent even more striking, creating an observable contrast between his low-profile demeanor and the significant vocal capacity that would later reach national attention. His 2012 Britain's Got Talent audition, presented alongside partner Charlotte Giaconelli, became a catalyst moment amplified by both national broadcast and international viral distribution. Analysts reviewing that appearance point out that the public reaction was not simply enthusiasm, but a measurable spike in interest surrounding young classical crossover performers. As commentators later noted, Antoine's rapid visibility shift raised early questions about how raw potential, when paired with early mentorship, can alter the trajectory of a young singer's development. This initial stage would become the foundation for ongoing comparisons to more seasoned vocal figures, prompting discussions about what distinguishes early promise from long-term operatic viability. Industry analysts noted an unusual pattern when, following the momentum of a televised debut, a teenage singer transitioned almost immediately into the commercial music sector, prompting questions about how rapidly a classical-leaning voice could adapt to professional production demands. Shortly after the Britain's Got Talent surge, Antoine and Giaconelli secured a commercial recording contract, a development rare for performers so early in training. Their first album demonstrated a blend of classical standards and accessible contemporary selections, shaping what critics later described as a strategic entry into the classical crossover market. Sales data from the period indicate that the duo's releases performed reliably within their category, suggesting that public interest extended beyond the novelty of their television origin. By 2014, Antoine's shift toward a solo career represented a significant pivot, with music reporters monitoring closely how his voice would evolve outside the duet format. His debut solo album, Tenor, offered early signs of expanding vocal maturity, including more structured phrasing and controlled dynamics. Subsequent releases showcased incremental refinement, leading reviewers to argue that Antoine was gradually constructing a long-term musical identity rather than relying solely on the notoriety from his early exposure. Industry observers noted that each project featured more demanding repertoire, suggesting deliberate progression. Over time, Antoine demonstrated the ability to sustain listener engagement while experimenting with broader stylistic choices, which led to him being categorized increasingly as a credible figure within the crossover sphere rather than a temporary breakout act. The parallels drawn by listeners between a young crossover vocalist and some of opera's most revered figures have prompted reporters to investigate whether these comparisons stem from measurable vocal attributes or from the public's fascination with prodigious talent. Much of the public discourse linking Antoine to renowned operatic figures originates from the distinctive tonal qualities that became evident in his early performances. Vocal experts cited in media analyses often reference his warm timbre, rounded vibrato, and controlled upper extension, traits commonly associated with classical tenors. These elements, combined with an emotionally transparent delivery, positioned his voice as unusually mature for his age, leading audiences to perceive similarities to celebrated opera figures even before Antoine formally entered operatic repertory. Critics observing his trajectory note that fan comparisons tend to intensify when Antoine performs pieces traditionally associated with operatic heavyweights, especially selections requiring sustained lyricism and expressive contrast. The phenomenon appears reinforced by the accessibility of viral clips, which allowed viewers worldwide to experience a first-listen shock effect, mirroring reactions once reserved for major operatic debuts. While professionals caution that stylistic comparisons should be made carefully, the recurring alignment of public opinion with technical evaluations indicates that the fascination is not purely emotional, but grounded in identifiable acoustic qualities. This convergence of expert commentary and audience enthusiasm has sustained ongoing debate about whether Antoine occupies a transitional space between crossover and operatic potential, or if his distinct artistic direction should be assessed entirely on its own terms. As comparisons to opera's most established names continue, industry reporters increasingly highlight the gaps that distinguish a promising crossover vocalist from figures who spent decades shaping the global operatic canon. Despite Antoine's notable vocal strengths, experts emphasize that traditional operatic prestige is rooted in elements beyond tonal beauty or early acclaim. Veteran opera reporters point out that legendary figures typically build their reputations through sustained engagement with staged productions, linguistic mastery across multiple operatic languages, and extensive interpretation of roles crafted for the rigorous demands of full-scale opera houses. In contrast, Antoine's career thus far has concentrated primarily within the classical crossover market, a genre designed to bridge accessibility and classical technique, but not necessarily oriented toward operatic role development. Analysts note that this divergence affects how his long-term potential is assessed, as crossover performance frequently prioritizes audience outreach over strict adherence to classical repertoire. Furthermore, the operatic path traditionally requires years of stamina training, vocal conditioning, and interpretive depth forged through repeated live performance under demanding acoustic conditions. While Antoine's development shows steady improvement, the structural differences between his trajectory and that of opera legends make direct equivalence inaccurate at this stage. Reporters also stress that age plays a pivotal role. Many revered tenors did not reach full vocal maturity until their 30s or 40s, suggesting that Antoine's growth curve may still be in an early phase. Commentators following Antoine's development note that behind the polished recordings and public praise lies a less visible narrative of pressure, expectation, and psychological hurdles that have shaped his artistic evolution. Media coverage over the years has detailed Antoine's openness regarding personal struggles, including early bullying and self-doubt, which played a meaningful role in shaping his confidence and public resilience. These challenges, while difficult, have provided context for understanding his cautious approach to fame. Observers report that such experiences often influence how young performers navigate rapid public exposure, and in Antoine's case, they contributed to a grounded and methodical progression rather than an aggressive pursuit of operatic stardom. Analysts also highlight the significant expectations imposed after early comparisons to prominent opera figures. While flattering, these comparisons created a heightened sense of scrutiny. Antoine has spoken candidly about the weight of these parallels, indicating that they prompted him to prioritize vocal health, structured training, and mental well-being. From a developmental standpoint, reporters note that this self-awareness may be advantageous, as classical vocal longevity depends as much on disciplined maintenance as on raw ability. His gradual improvement across recordings and live performances suggests that he is managing these pressures constructively. By examining these challenges, journalists argue that Antoine's trajectory cannot be evaluated solely through his vocal output. The psychological and developmental context is essential for understanding his potential future direction. While experts caution against premature declarations of operatic greatness, several documented performances have prompted renewed media discussion about whether Antoine may eventually bridge the gap between crossover prominence and classical distinction. Across his catalog, a number of Antoine's performances have generated notable attention from both fans and classical observers. Selections such as iconic arias and high-emotion ballads have demonstrated surprising interpretive depth, leading commentators to highlight the technical control and expressive clarity he brings to demanding passages. These performances also reveal his ability to engage audiences who do not typically consume classical repertoire, which reporters identify as a significant asset in an era where traditional opera struggles with demographic reach. Analysts examining his progression over time observe steadily improving breath support, phrasing sophistication, and tonal stability, indicators that his technique is continuing to mature. Furthermore, his willingness to explore both classical and contemporary material reflects artistic flexibility rather than indecision, positioning him as a figure with potential to influence how younger audiences perceive classical vocal performance. While he has not yet undertaken the operatic roles traditionally used to benchmark greatness, the trajectory suggests he possesses the foundational elements necessary for further advancement. Industry reporters generally conclude that Anton's path remains open-ended, shaped not by limitations, but by future artistic choices, and the continued evolution of a voice still developing toward its long-term potential.